Grab your popcorn, grab your goat, grab your drink, maybe grab a Sazerac. I am clearly not Patti Negri, but I'm Jason Mankey. I'm sitting in the big chair because blondes have more fun. We are the Witches Movie Coven with lots of special guests. It's going to be a great show. We're all excited that you are here joining us. So let's introduce everybody in the Coven. We're going to start with my favorite square, Richard-Lael.
Oh.
Hello.
We're going to throw it to Heather Greene. Oh,
I'm sorry. I thought we froze for a second. I'm having internet issues. Sorry. Go on.
Oh, just introductions. This is Richard-Lael. All right.
Yeah.
Heather Greene.
Heather Greene.
Oh, okay. Well, I am Heather Greene, and I am the author of Lights, Camera, Witchcraft, which my goat's sitting on. There it is right there. It is the book that covers all things witchy in Hollywood cinema. I am a editor at Llewellyn Worldwide, as well as a religion journalist and all kinds of other things. I can't even imagine what else I do. And I'm a member of this coven, so I'm happy to be here tonight.
And I do think that one of the authors that you work with is sitting with us tonight, the great Lilith Dorsey.
Hello,
Yes.
I am an author, a voodoo priestess, a filmmaker, film scholar, I guess, for the purposes of this discussion. And I'm so happy to be the guest witch.
You're like more than just a guest witch. I think we've been talking about you on the show since we've started a year ago. Your name comes up with a lot of frequency. It may just
thank
be
you.
because some of us are big fans. And then also in the bottom square, the man who has been called Sir Raven already in our chat, Gwion Raven.
Hello, I'm Gwion Raven. Apparently I've been benighted now, so I'm now Sir Raven, which I must admit has a kind of nice ring to it. And, witch at large. I don't know I've ever actually mentioned this before, but former actor. So I know a little bit about the old movie and television and stage biz.
I was in London with Gwion once, and we're walking around. He's like, this is where I was in Oliver. This is where I used to drink as a 6-year-old child with Yul Brynner after shows. It was amazing. It was,
all true.
So we usually like to begin our shows with one of my favorite parts of the big show, Richard-Lael's shattered synopsises of our films.
Yes. So I will start off with that. So there are 2 films to choose from. No, I take that back. There's only one film to choose from. Anyway, in this story, it is the story about a little boy whose parents die tragically in a car accident, because any good parent is a dead one, apparently, according to Roald Dahl. And then, so the boy's parents dies, and he goes to live with his nana, and they're obviously in some part of Sweden, unless, of course, you're watching the 2021, and then they're in Alabama for some whatever reason. And they discover that the grandmother, while they're sort of going through the motions of mourning and grief, the grandmother reveals that she has encountered real witches. And
Wait,
she's
what?
What? I know, real witches. Witches are real. And she goes on this sort of, she tells her grandchild how to tell if there is a witch. And one of the ways, of course, you can tell that a witch is that witches are always women. However, it doesn't talk about warlocks, but witches are always women, and they always wear gloves. And they wear wigs because they have no hair. And if you look, there's a little tinge of purple to the eye. Well, so anyway, he encounters this witch, and then as sort of an escape, they end up by going to the hotel by the seaside for her health. And it turns out that at this same hotel, there is the Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Children. They're having their annual conference, which, of course, is disguised by the fact that they are actually witches. And so the Grand High Witch makes her scene, and she says, "Witches of England." long story short. So she reveals the diabolical plan that she wants to turn all children into rodents, because children, they smell like dog's droppings. And so she has offered this rather plump little boy 6 chocolate bars. And he meets at exactly the right time and poof, turns into a rat. But unbeknownst to the witches, who are so enthralled by the fact that there is this little boy who's turning into a rat, they don't realize that there is, in fact, another little boy, who's the grandson, hiding underneath the stage and is going to be turned into a rat. So he ends up, long story short, going back to save Grandma. Grandma helps him turn the other witches into rats by stealing the Formula 86, which goes into their soup. And then all the witches explode. And then, of course, in the 1990 version, the one thing that Roald Dahl hated was the additional character. He turns back into a boy, which repents of her ways, turns back into a boy. They live happily ever after. But in the book and in the 2020 film, which I like the ending of that one, he stays a rat and fights off witches because he has the address book of all of the witches in the world. He doesn't have mine because I just moved, but he has all of the addresses of all of the witches in the world. And then he uses the money that was generated, of course, how they got it. It was generated by the Grand High Witch so that these witches could buy chocolate shops to poison the children. And I will say this, living next door to a 3-year-old who wants to run all hours of the day and night, I completely understand why one would want to turn it into a rat.
Mm.
They make a lot less noise while they're running around, right?
Right? Rats do not make that much noise.
No, yeah.
That is
Which would be an
untrue.
improvement over the noise. Yeah.
And they don't shake my lamps and shake my pictures. Maybe I should go out and offer some chocolate to the little child.
Yeah, I think a plan is brewing here. For a little context on our movie, we're going to go to Heather Greene, who wrote the book on it. She's the expert on witch movies.
Yeah, so we're going to go back in time to the Satanic Panic yet again. We often do that, it seems. It's because there was a lot of witch movies produced at this period of time. It was the second witch wave, as I call it, of popularity of witch movies in American cinema. So this one is 1990, right dead center, really, of the Satanic Panic, and also but closer towards the end of when we start seeing, no, that's wrong. It was the beginning of Hollywood's taking up the topic. It began again 1988, 1987, around then. So this is right there, right in the center of it all. The movie was released in 1990, the original movie. The book was, I think, released in 1983. I just put that up in my literature a series I'm doing on my socials. It's 1983, I believe. So the book was written during the very beginning of the Satanic Panic, and the Satanic Panic was taking place in the UK as well as in the US. It was not limited to the US. So that's an important thing because Roald Dahl is from the UK. So the other piece of this is that's interesting. It's a Jim Henson film. Of course, that's obvious in a lot of the makeup and a lot of the stuff going on there. He was very popular at the time. And what's even more interesting about this movie is the movie was released, I believe, in the summer, if I remember correctly, of 1990. Jim Henson died in May. He died a couple months before it was released. He never got to see it full released. And Roald Dahl died in November after its release. So both of the main influencers of this film died around its release. And the interesting part of this is Roald Dahl hated this movie. And he was appalled. He asked for changes. He sent letters. He did not like how dark it was. He didn't like Jim Henson's touch on it, how it got darker and a little scarier. And that's a big point because the movie, it's got a following. We are looking at, decades later, it's got a cult following. People love aspects of it. It's definitely a witch movie people turn to watch witch movies, but it was not well received. It had a very mixed review, and for the same reason as Hocus Pocus, and we go back to the same reason as Wizard of Oz, the movie was too scary for children and too silly for adults, and so it missed a mark so in its audience. So it did okay, but it did not it wasn't a splash success in the end. But of course, since then it's become widely popular. Roald Dahl actually said he was not going to release another one of his books ever again to Hollywood after this. Of course, he died in November, and his family had other ideas because we've had many Roald Dahl stories being told in many forms: Broadway, James and the Giant Peach, BFG, Matilda. We had Willy Wonka come back again. And then of course this one was released again in 2020 with a modern spin, a little bit of a different look, and some changes that now fit not the Satanic Panic, but now fit the current era and thoughts about witchcraft. So that's the context of this, and we can move on to discussing whether we like it or not, I guess.
That's a tough question, because this is a movie, like, parts of it I really liked and parts of it just kind of make me scratch my head. I was watching it today and my wife came in and she goes, I remember this movie. This really frightened me as a child, and I've never watched it again. It frightened me so badly. She would have been, I'm supposed to say she would have been 2, but she would have been 11 when she watched that movie. And the torment is still there with her. Lilith, what did you think about this movie?
It did come out in the summer. It came out in the end of August. And I remember that I was so pregnant. Came out, I think, August 24th, and my daughter was born September 3rd. So I remember waddling into the thing to see this, because I'm such an amazing kind of Nicholas Roeg fan. Like, part of my scholarships at NYU were because I wrote about Nicholas Roeg. And I think for me, I separate it from the actual practice of witchcraft. For me, this is more of a spooky cautionary tale for children and adults, and what strange things happen in the midnight sun. And that's what it is for me. If I take it away from what it is to be a modern witch, to have that identity, and just kind of see it as this cautionary fairy tale that Roald Dahl was so beautiful for giving us.
Gwen.
So odd thing about this movie, it was one of the first Roald Dahl books that I read as an adult, right? So I'd read, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory and James and the Giant Peach and whatnot when I was a kid or a teenager. But this book came out in 1983, but I didn't read it until, I think, right before the movie came out, right? So I was an adult by the time that it came out. So it was a little bit different. I thoroughly enjoyed the book. And the movie it kind of puts me in mind, which makes sense because of Jim Henson. It really put me in mind of like the Dark Crystal era, that same kind of puppetry and exaggerated stuff. And it was scary. And I remember thinking, because my kids were born a little bit later. My son was born in 92. And I sort of had the decision when he was about 5 or 6 and the movie had been out and probably available on video at that point. Do I want him to watch it or not? And I think we did play it, but I don't think he liked it that much. And so it sort of dropped off my radar, really, because I think, like what you said, Heather, a little too silly for adults and a little too scary for kids.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of Henson things were like that. Like, the tones were never quite right. I mean, even the Muppet movies, people always think that these movies are for kids, but Jim Henson really made those movies for adults. There's a lot of winking and nods and things for more mature audiences in there.
Yeah.
If I remember, Richard-Lael, this is a movie that you really love, right? You're the one who picked this for us.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I think he's still frozen.
Yeah.
Oh no, there you are.
New Orleans is not cooperating with us
tonight. I am. Can you hear me?
No.
My internet keeps going in and out.
We're on fire. Leave us alone.
Right? I don't know why. Maybe because of maybe the children are doing it. I don't know. So yes, I did pick this movie. I love this movie. And in fact, many years ago, when I first went to Hollywood, I was in a show. It was sort of this amalgamation of fairy tales that I was cast as the evil queen. And people said to me, "Oh my God, you remind me of Angelica Huston as the Grand High Witch." I went, "That's by design," because I even had the black dress, and I came out and I had the purple wrap, and I threw it down, and it became the train of my dress. So yes, it was absolutely by design. I love this film. I was a kid too when I saw it, but I loved it. I couldn't get enough. I thought it wasn't violent enough. I will tell you, just to get some comparison though, I did watch the 2020 film, and I was so embarrassed over the 2020 film because I applaud them. They tried to make it more inclusive. That's great. But they put an African-American family in 1969 in Alabama in one of the wealthiest white hotels, which historically would have been, they would not have been able to have cohabited in that space. Horrible as it was 1969. That's not what happened. Also, I didn't really like in the newer film, they were trying desperately to make it relatable, but I felt like it made it even more. I'm cautious with this, but the newer film felt very sort of racially stereotypical in a lot of ways. They would say things like, "Oh, well, you like cornbread, or you like cake. Cake is just cornbread, or cornbread is just cake." And then they would say things like, "Well, butter my biscuits." And I'm going, what is this? And then I didn't understand why the witches didn't have two fingers. So they were doing that sort of, I thought that was weird. And they didn't wear a mask, but they were unhinged at the side. And then there were a lot of Jesus references in the new film, which made me cringe. The Grand High Witch was in room 666, of course. And then the grandmother she bowed her head and prayed to the good Lord. And I'm going, what are you marketing? What I don't like this. I would have been fine with it being a black family. They could have left it in Europe where they would not have had the same racial tensions that they would have had here in Alabama in 1969. I was deeply offended, but I have to admit, I did love the fashion in the 2021. It was fabulous. In the 1991, Angelica Huston is a goddess. I mean, she is every aspiration that I have as an out gay male witch. That is what I want to be, as the Grand High Witch.
Heather, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
So this movie, the original, came out in 1990.
Mm-hmm.
And if I look at the way Angelica Huston's makeup is, it's really reminiscent, especially with the lighting, of when she was Morticia Adams.
1 year later.
1 year later.
1 year later.
Okay.
Yeah,
there's a contemporary.
Yeah, yeah, she was working on both of those signing contracts at the exact same time. And that is on purpose. I mean, you look at the Grand High Witch and you can see a similar look, character. That's not an accident.
Yeah,
and she was super popular at the time. And she is the only thing that's fabulous about this movie, in my opinion. And the rest of it could go ahead, and I agree with Roald Dahl. I'm giving you my opinion. I do not like this movie. I did not like this movie when it came out. I do not. Go ahead, turn your light out, Jason. I see you're aiming for it.
We're not there yet. We're not there yet.
I like this movie. Richard-Lael's leaving. I like this movie less than Hocus Pocus, the original one. And if you've heard me trash talk on Hocus Pocus, you know that that's the case. I would rather watch. However, I will watch this one before we watch the Muppet movie Wizard of Oz. So with that said, that's always my bar on this show right now. So there's animals that are supposed to be real that move their mouths, which, as you know, I've said on the show before, that is like just an absolute stop for me. I don't like it. I just, it was boring. I loved watching Angelica Huston act. How could you not? She's fantastic. The rest of it, I didn't care for. I just, from a perspective as a film historian, it's very interesting. It's interesting, for my book, it was interesting. And, I'll watch anything, but in terms of just enjoyment, I never liked this movie ever. And the second one, I thought there was some corrections that I did enjoy. I thought it was interesting. I liked the grandmother. I thought was wonderful. I love the fact that they projected her as doing magic herself, and which you have a positive form of witchcraft, which was beautiful. And of course, one of the ways they fixed it, kind of like Hocus Pocus got fixed as well in that sense, or not fixed, but meeting the cultural moment. I like the fact that the mice were animated, so when they talked with their mouths, it wasn't bothering me as much as it does makes me itch when the animatronic ones go. So I thought there were some great things but there were some problems with the first one too. And ultimately, I could leave the 2021 aside too, other than some of the pieces which were nice, like you pointed out, Richard-Lael. There's problems. There's some nice pieces. The first one, Angelica Huston's pretty much the only thing that I could say good about that movie. The rest of it,
I have to say too, I didn't mean to interrupt, but there is one other thing that I did love about the 1991 that I didn't tell you, is that in the scene when all of the witches are gathered in the ballroom, most of them are men in drag because they're supposed to be ugly witches.
I think there's some of that in the original one too, because I was really looking at the faces.
Yeah, in the original one, that's what I'm talking about. In the original, they're all.
Yeah, I liked that a lot. I liked that effect a lot.
I did too.
Yeah.
I really liked. I was like, hey, I would wear that.
So. Yeah, I just think, I think he was onto something. I love Jim Henson. I'm going to say this. I love Jim Henson. I think he was a brilliant, brilliant person. I got to interview his son and talk about some of the spiritual stuff that he was into. I think he was a genius. And I wonder if this had played less, if it had played more straight, if it hadn't been so spooky, if he hadn't put that element into it, would it have worked a little bit better? I don't know. I really don't know. And that was Roald Dahl. One of Roald Dahl's complaints is that he was too much of the macabre, was introduced into it, too much of Jim Henson's Dark Crystal, like you pointed out. That was what Roald Dahl didn't like. So I wonder if it had played more straight, if it would have been any different. But, you introduce those stupid talking animals and I'm done. I'm like, this is really...
Everyone has a line in the sand. That's Heather's line in the sand.
When you have
animals.
Yes.
I think the second one suffers from Anne Hathaway is not a bad actress, but she does not have the gravitas of Angelica Huston. No. Right? No. I mean, yeah.
She also could not get the accent correct. One moment she's sort of German, one moment she's sort of French, one moment she's sort of Russian. But the way that it is written, if you read the book, she is definitely, the Grand High Witch is definitely German. You know that she is German because the dialect is written that way.
Mm-hmm.
But Anne Hathaway was not. She was all over the board.
When that movie started, the 1991, I couldn't figure out her accent for a while. It was just, It was so deep. I thought I was going to have to turn on the subtitles for a little while. then I adapted, but no one expects a whole lot from me. So you all know that.
Was the length good for you?
The length was good. It was 90 minutes, which it's still a long 90 minutes, but it's 90 minutes, which is good. It wasn't a 2.5 hour slog like Bed Knobs and Broomsticks or something.
Another good one. You were bringing them all up today.
Yeah, bringing up our favorites. There was a comment in the chat about the depiction of the Grand High Witch. and how people then they were uncomfortable with it, because to me it did remind me of the stereotypes that I sometimes see of witches, which are in a lot of ways like Jewish stereotypes, which is always heartbreaking to see.
Well, then you just capitalize, you just add on to that the fact that Roald Dahl is notoriously anti-Semitic, which has come out recently, even more so because the museum, the Roald Dahl Museum, confirmed that it was not he was flatly anti-Semitic. You add that into the German accent as well. He came from a specific time. He was anti-Semitic. And yes, a lot of the witch stereotypes going back for hundreds of years, anyone who's done any history know that a lot of them do match up with anti-Semitism that has been prevalent for hundreds and hundreds of years. So, but they are also, you have the kid thing, witches eating kids. That's right out of the Hansel and Gretel. That's again Germanic tales. You have all of that, and that was part of the Satanic Panic. That's why this one worked so well in 1990. People were terrified that witches were harming children. And here you go, a movie about witches harming children. That one, pair that with Hocus Pocus, and you got a nice evening.
And you know what? As a witch, I have to tell you that I love children. I can just never finish a whole one by myself.
We also the end of we also oh gosh, what happens for real with the Simpsons? They told the real story about how witches stopped eating children. The end of the what was it? The broom. What's the one, the Simpsons one we just watched, where at the end they're about to eat, they're going out to get children, and then they offer them candy and cookies and said, "Oh yeah, okay, yeah."
I just wish we'd found this before we went to those first 5 houses or something.
Yeah, right, exactly. So we got reform. Some of us did anyway, right?
Yeah. There you go. One of the things that I will say I am pleased about with this movie is what they got wrong. Because obviously when the potion got released, all of the witches in England were killed, we disappeared. And then they were coming to America to do the same thing. And look at us all here. So they didn't get all of us.
Really?
Not all the witches. We have that wonderful Jane Hark scene where she's turning him back and everything.
Oh, that's right.
Which
actually, she's redeemed, isn't she?
I had to realize again that she was Bubble from Ab Fab. Come on, like just such an iconic character. And there she is in all of her like shiny, happy glory, beaming like the good magic to turn him back. Like, yeah, it's trash, but I think that not just Angelica Huston stands out for me and Jane Harks, but also Maya Zetterling. You know what I mean? We've got this iconic in theater, and film. Yeah. And we've also got Rowan Atkinson, right? Like before fame. So we've got these kind of like really great characters popping up there. And again, I said I separated in, you've got performance and you've got all these kinds of extreme things. That's his thing. So what is he taking? He's taking all these extreme stereotypes and pushing the boundaries. We look at Don't Look Now, where he's got the, evil psychic again with the evil children, all these things that are just sort of turned on their head. And I think it's classically for me a road to a Jim Henson kind of scenario.
Heather, do you think some of the darkness comes from what was going on in Jim Henson's life at that point? And soon to be death?
I wouldn't think so. I know he was sick throughout the production, but he tends to do this kind of stuff throughout. I mean, you think about Dark Crystal, that was 1982.
Yeah.
And then Labyrinth was 1985. So I think this one was less dark than those in many ways. So I don't think so. This was a Roald Dahl story, so I don't see the level of darkness that Roald Dahl thought that Jim Henson was Satan he was so upset from all the readings that I did, but I don't see that level of darkness in this movie. So I don't know for sure, but I would guess just looking at the other films, Dark Crystal's really dark. Legend. That's we haven't discussed that movie. I won't give you my opinion of that movie, but
I watched that movie not too long ago because Phoenix
Labyrinth. I meant Labyrinth, not Legend. Sorry.
Oh yeah. No, we watched
I do
Legend recently, and there was 112 minutes I'll never get back.
I loved it. I love Legends.
The thing about Labyrinth,
that is a hill I will die on.
It does not travel well.
the thing about Labyrinth
I
though is
I don't actually. I was gonna say I don't care about Labyrinth, but Legend, I love. I love Legend. Labyrinth.
I love Lamp. I think Labyrinth though, you have to with Labyrinth though you have to have a guy with a cod piece on the whole film to sort of balance everything out. That's what makes Labyrinth, right? And this is what the witches needed. It needed a character wearing a cod piece. Like Rowan Atkinson could have had a cod piece on while he was running around the hotel, kind of as a precursor to
wore
Mr.
one in
Bean.
Blackadder. Quite.
Maybe that was what it was missing this whole time.
Yeah.
Yeah, he did.
Maybe that's what it was missing. Maybe that's why I didn't like it. But I didn't like Labyrinth either. I'm just going to add that in. So it wasn't that. Now the lights are going out. Nope. I did not. Now you bring on some Fraggle Rock or Muppet movies. I'm good. The early Muppet movies, not the Wizard of Oz.
Yeah, I was going to say the Muppet Wizard of Oz. That's a classic. Timeless classic.
Now we can all shut our lights off after that one.
Including me.
But I know, Richard-Lael, you're lying through your teeth when you say that, so I won't shut my light off.
I really like the Miss Piggy song in that movie. I think it's unfairly maligned on this show.
Okay,
I think we've watched worse movies.
Well,
Just Amber says, like, these are all my favorite movies. And I do think there is something, we talked about last time I was on, we talked about a movie that I loved that most everybody on this panel disliked. But I also think some of it's contextual, right? Like seeing this movie when you were like 8 or 9 or 10 or 12 is going to have a really different impression if you watch it when you're 17 or 25 or, whatever it is. So, yeah, I totally get it. Like, there are movies that I absolutely adore that looking back on now, I'm like, wow, that was crap. But at the time, it's really meaningful.
And
Willy
you know
Wonka
what?
and the Chocolate Factory, #1.
Yep. I'm with you on that one. But and that's okay. And even as adults, there's movies we like that are just terrible movies, but we just love them, and you can't stop watching them. And everybody's got those, and that's okay too. This movie isn't so bad it needs to be buried. Wait a minute. Everyone stop what they're doing.
I didn't want to interrupt. Hi, everybody. Greetings from Cradle Mountain, Tasmania. I am so sorry. I wanted to be outside with the wombats and the wallabies, but there's no reception out there. There's not even any reception or television or anything in my cabin. It's fabulous. So I have to be in the boring lodge. So I miss you all madly. And
We miss you too.
It's cool though that you get to have these kind of adventures though, right? Like to be in
I
New
am the
Zealand.
luckiest girl in the world. I'm paid to take people on bushwalks and have them experience nature and the energy and pull it up from the ground. And these are super corporate people. I am throwing them so far out of their comfort level. I'm having them make like spare sigils and carve soap and ridiculous, fabulous things. And they're like, oh, okay. And yeah, so.
The most challenging part, though, that Patti hasn't told everybody is that tonight, when they're having hot chocolate around the fireplace, they have to watch The Witches.
Yes, I will tell them that. We're going to go get on a little bus to go to some beautiful lake. This place is, if anybody can ever go to Tasmania, go. I've been to a lot of magical places like New Orleans where you are Lilith and all the, but nothing like this. It's just so anyway, but we're going to this lake thing and I see them looking. It's like, I promise you're not going to have to take off your clothes early. Yeah. They're so corporate. They're so cute. So anyway, I just wanted to say hi. I do not want to interrupt your movie talk. I will listen in and when I can, but this is the only place I could found to actually have reception. So I love you guys.
We love you and miss you. It's so good that you could drop by.
I know, it's fun. So knock them alive. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. I don't know how to turn this on.
I forgot to ask her, like, how does the water go down the toilet, right? Is it clockwise or counterclockwise? It's always a big question.
I think someone asked what time it is over there. I'm guessing it's early morning.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're 24 hours ahead, 5 hours behind. So whatever that is for wherever you are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
It's
I know
tomorrow
from working with Australian authors, this is about the time that they start answering my emails. So that was a treat.
Lilith, did you see the 2020 movie or version of this movie? The 2020 version?
And I was bothered by most of the same things that were mentioned earlier. I didn't like the Jesus things. I mean, I love Octavia, so she's fantastic, and I like that. I like that we were sort of having this kind of black magic, not in a bad way, but in a good way. But it did get very Christian for me, and I didn't like that. Mm-hmm. And I way prefer Angelica Huston. I really don't like Anne Hathaway at all. She's just one of those people that like leaves a bad whatever in my so I didn't like it. And I thought
it was scarier.
It was pretty. Like, I love the costumes. What?
I said she was more frightening to me than Angelica Huston's character. The way they did her mouth and just everything. And there was controversy surrounding her and her character portrayal. And I don't remember the details. It was the portrayal of her having limited fingers or something. Does everyone remember that controversy? That is actually as a condition, and people who have that condition were really upset that she was the way she represented it, and then she had to come apologize. There was a little bit of a controversy about that. So,
do you remember, on that same note, and again, representation matters. I think we all agree with that. But Taco Bell, this is a tangent. Taco Bell had a commercial a bunch of years ago, 20 years ago, when Shaquille O'Neal, the basketball player, was still playing. And the whole thing was that you turned your head this way to eat the taco, and then your neck got stuck. Mm-hmm. And there was a similar outrage because apparently there is some condition where people's neck locks into place, and they had to pull the commercial. So, shit happens. Well, these are the weird things that are in my brain that I can't ever let go. I'm sorry.
This is why we vacation together, because it's never a dull moment.
That's true.
One of the things I liked about the 2020 movie, though, they made a bigger deal about, how they're peeling their faces off. And like they would, like, you could see the seam where the mask goes on the real face over the real face of the witch. And it seemed to be a much bigger deal. In the 1990 version, you get the moment where Angelica Huston takes off her, her mask, and she tells everybody to take off their wigs, but obviously they didn't have the makeup budget for everybody to take off the masks, right? And then they don't really mention it again a whole lot. Everybody's always in very human form, which I thought was great because I thought Angelica Huston was just too hideous looking with all the other stuff, and I didn't want to see it again. But it was a bigger deal, I thought, in the 2020 film.
I think, if I may, the reason that the Grand High Witch is the only one wearing a mask in that version is because she is the Grand High Witch. And apparently, when one deals with dark magic, they get uglier and uglier and uglier. And since she is the Grand High Witch, there is no one more ugly than she. However, some of those lookers in that crowd were close. So
was there some sort of
maybe it was because she was.
What was that? There was some sort of controversy where they had to recut it because that particular scene was too scary. I thought I read that somewhere.
It's quite possible. I just reviewing my notes from this one. They Roald Dahl actually asked for a number of cuts because of that very reason. But according to the reports that I have, nothing got cut. Like Jim Henson said, yeah, and then nothing got cut. So I don't know if that's different than what you're talking about. But I mean, that was the biggest problem the movie had in reception, is kids were too scared to see it. And parents didn't want to sit through, adults don't want to sit through a movie where little mice are running around talking with their mouths open.
I liked the puppets. I thought that was one of the best parts of the movie. I liked the puppets more than the CGI mice in the 2020 version. There's just something very magical about puppetry, and I liked sort of when they would stop and talk, you had the puppets and then they go back to real mice, and it wasn't seamless, but I thought for 1990 with a very small budget, it was pretty close. I thought they did a really good job. I guess I'm not as frightened or as horrified by talking animals as Heather, but I don't think most people are as horrified by talking animals as Heather.
I'm not horrified or frightened. I just dislike it. And if I could reach my light switch, I would have turned it off right there. I like the CGI mice much better. That's all. I'm standing my ground.
Well, no,
but they didn't have that in 1990, so I'm not gonna begrudge them that. Of course, they didn't have that option.
I still like it better. I'm with you, Jason. The CGI makes me roll my eyes. At least I can suspend my disbelief when it's an animatronic, and I can see the little gears turning and I know that it is. I love that human element.
I think
the CGI to me looks cheap.
I think having the puppet just makes it look more like a fairy tale. It looks more magical to me because of the puppet being in it.
Oh, we're losing him, I think.
Yeah, the hamsters running the internet in New Orleans are not being kind to Richard-Lael.
Or animatronic mice, as the case may be.
Yeah, hopefully their mouths aren't moving too much. But I don't know. It's just I really liked it. Maybe just because it gives me that warm feeling that it is a Jim Henson movie when I see a puppet too, which is something I really appreciate.
See, this one doesn't feel like, I know it's a Jim Henson movie. It doesn't feel like a Jim Henson movie to me. And, that's the thing. And I'm the person who walks into the Jim Henson Museum, the Puppetry Arts Center here in Atlanta. And if you love Jim Henson, you need to go to the Puppetry Arts Center here in Atlanta. It's, if you love him, you walk in, you go to the section where they have, I haven't been there in years, so I'm not sure what it looks like now. I walked in, the first thing I see is Ernie and Bert and Big Bird, and that's how you enter in. And I'm crying the minute. This is my childhood, all of the things, every single one. I watched the Muppet movie a million times. Like I said, Fraggle Rock, on the later years, just everything. And you walk through that center and you're just, Skeksis, everything. They're all there. Love it. This does not feel to me like a Jim Henson movie. I don't know, just from watching it. I know it is, but it doesn't.
Curiosity, feel like Heather. Did you like Rowan Atkinson cast in this movie? Because we've talked a lot about Angelica Huston. Was he good? Was he fine? Was it? What do you think?
He was fine, but I think not enough fine for him to be standout. And I know he's great, but not enough for me to go, okay, he's standout for me. The movie my lack of interest in the movie just kind of overshadowed that. Angelica Huston's the only one that stands out to me. Yeah. Maybe if I watch it enough times, I'll go, haha, okay, Rowan Atkinson, but not really. I could pass. He's done other things where I like him better. This movie just doesn't. I'd rather watch Angelica. Oh, I can't say her name. Angelica Huston in another movie as well. Yeah. But
The Addams Family, 1991. Yes.
There you go. Right. She is fantastic as Morticia. She was made for that role.
Yeah,
I think Rowan Atkinson is entirely wasted in this movie.
Yeah,
to have an actor that is that funny, that has that much personality, and he really doesn't do very much. There should have been more times of him mugging at the camera. He's in the kitchen. He should have a turkey over his head. All kinds of things like that, and they weren't there. Lilith said something that I completely agree with, though. I think May Zetterling is really good in this movie, and that she has really great presence as the grandmother. And she's almost creepy in her own way because she has all these secrets of, knowing the history of the witches.
Oh yeah, this huge backstory. And you made me think too, Heather, when you're talking about museums, did anybody see that there was a museum exhibit at the Academy for this movie? Just recently, apparently.
No, really.
Really?
Yeah, I don't know anybody who saw it. I got to find someone from LA or whatever, but apparently there was an interactive thing that you could go through with this movie, which I can't even imagine what they would have done. Like, it just must have been insane. And I thought we were the only people talking about it, but apparently it has more cachet than we even could ever know.
It's got a following, but I don't see what they would do. It doesn't have enough to me to do. But if you were to do a Jim Henson thing, or maybe you were to do a witches thing, or Angelica Huston, I just don't see what you would center this, or a Roald Dahl thing. I don't know what you would center around this particular film, but it does have a huge following, just like Hocus Pocus. It does not have as big of a following in the witch community as Hocus Pocus. And I think if you compare the witches here compared to the Hocus Pocus witches, the Hocus Pocus witches equally want to destroy children. However, they are so fun in and of themselves, and wild and fun and colorful, that their evil is not quite as scary, is not quite as dark as you find here. So they did not capture, I don't think that these witches capture the pagan witchcraft community in the same way the Hocus Pocus witches have.
No, that's true.
Yeah, and I think that Disney was very successful when they brought them back was it last year when they brought Hocus Pocus 2. Unfortunately, they remade this movie, so remaking the story again I don't think was as successful. So and this is Disney too. Disney owns Jim Henson now, so
also I think that the witches in this movie are not recognizable to us. They're witches with no toes, they're wearing masks, they're all wearing wigs. The witches in something like Hocus Pocus are recognizable to us, right? I mean, they're people, not monsters. Right. And I think that's really, really different. Before we do wands up or wands down on this movie, I thought maybe we do a little check-in, see what everybody's got going on in their lives right now. And if anybody's traveling or doing anything, we'll start with Heather and just kind of go around the circle.
Oh, okay. Well, we are getting ready to do our Samhain, our final Samhain working tomorrow. We do a 7-day thing. We started 7 days ago, and it is the 15-degree Scorpio today. So we do celebrate it on the astrological sign, astrological Samhain. So we're doing that. I'm not traveling anywhere because I've got mounds and mounds, which you cannot see, of wonderful manuscripts that I have to read and work on. One of which I just handed off to production is Lilith Dorsey's book that will be coming out, which hopefully I'll let you plug when it's your turn. Okay. But it is fantastic, and I read it several times, and I'm looking forward to that coming out next fall, if I look at my calendar correctly. It's spring, summertime.
Yeah,
anyway,
yeah,
so I am going to be here at the Coven every week and working with my wonderful authors. You can find me at heathergreene.net, and I am doing a literature series on all my socials right now. All kinds of fictional works that are related to witchcraft movies. So join me on social media to see those over November. That's it.
I think we have to just go straight to Lilith now because I want to know about the book.
All right. Well, I am working on a new book that's going to be released hopefully in June of next year. Here, look, cover reveal. You can't even see it. Tarot Every Which Way. So basically, it's a tarot book. For those of you who were waiting for me to put together a tarot book, I finally did it. And this is not for one witch, it's for every single witch out there. So I'm really excited about that. We've got some really great contributors in there giving us little snippets about what to do. I've just got some fantastic endorsements that I'm so thankful for. And I'm doing everything else that I always do. My blog, Voodoo Universe, all my other books. I've got the Pop Culture Show on my YouTube channel. So in case anybody's not tired of watching me, they can watch me more there. Oh yeah, Water Magic book too. Yeah.
What a great endorsement. What an endorser. She must have been scraping the
I
bottom of the
know, I
barrel for that
know.
one.
This
Bottom
famous
of the
witch, Jason
barrel.
Mankey. I love him. He's
Richard-Lael,
great.
what about you?
Well, I am not going to be traveling for a while, but I am here in New Orleans. I am easily found. I am very easy to find. There are some fakes out there they'll contact you to join the Illuminati, and they'll contact you to have readings, and you'll know my dialect. I won't contact you. You can contact me, thegentlemanpsychic.com. I'm easy peasy. And that's about it. I'm here in New Orleans. So if you're in New Orleans, if you're in the area, come in and we'll eat a child together.
As one does.
I know that Gwen has the book, The Magic of Food. Are there any child recipes in your book?
No, although some of my recipes are appropriate for children to make. But yeah, no leg of toddler or anything like that. So yeah.
Any you up to anything right now?
I actually just finished up all my Samhainses. I think there were 3 different Samhain gatherings, a public ritual and a couple of private ones with our Coven, and that was really, really lovely. So now becomes the big hibernation for me. Like, witch-wise, it's much more of an interior time for me. And then I'll be traveling again, I think, in March, I think it is. And then I've got a lot of travel scheduled for next year, some for pleasure and some for witchcraft. I mean, it's all for witchcraft, really. But there's that. And you can find me on Instagram at Gwion Raven, or you can find me out and about at The Witches Next Door, which is both on Instagram and a podcast that my amazing and talented wife, Phoenix LaFay, participates in as well. So you can find us hanging around there.
All right.
I want to jump in there now. I worked with Gwion and his wonderful Phoenix LaFay as well on a book called Life Ritualized, which is all about ritualizing in the pagan and witch way, all kinds of aspects of your life. If you're interested in that, it's fantastic. That's been out for a couple years now. So you did a great job.
Thanks, Heather. Yeah,
it was another one of those books where they scraped the bottom of the barrel for the foreword and had me do it.
We loved you doing that. Wasn't that your first foreword?
I think it might have been. Yeah, it was quite an honor. It's a really great book too. Phoenix writes great rituals.
She does.
I'm Jason Mankey. I'm going to be in Las Vegas this weekend at Las Vegas Pagan Pride on Saturday. So I'm very excited about that. And then traveling a lot in February and March. Before we do Wands Up, Wands Down, we did have a request for the Mankey Movie Minute. I did write one. I don't think it's as good as some of the others, but we're going to give it a go. So, hopefully somebody laughs. All right. Pay a visit to the Hotel Excelsior and meet the most oblivious hotel staff in the history of the hospitality business. Marvel as over 50 witches completely and loudly trash a conference room without anyone checking in on them. And then those same witches openly chase a boy through the hotel while no one bats an eye. And not just that, the Grand High Witch then tries to kill a baby by pushing the baby's stroller down a hill and over a cliff. If you and I did that kind of stuff in a hotel, we wouldn't just be asked to leave. We'd be getting arrested. And the staff of the Hotel Mr. Bean just completely overlooked the destruction, the attempted murder, all of it. They aren't even impressed when talking mice suddenly show up at their hotel. They just start butchering the mice with carving knives like they're the farmer's wife from the Three Blind Mice nursery rhyme. You might be wondering why the witches and the witches choose the lousiest hotel in the UK for a meeting, because nestled in the walls of the Hotel Excelsior, they were free to hatch a plan to kill hundreds of children by turning them into mice, which sounds completely awful, until you meet a child named Bruno. And then you start to think, maybe these witches might be onto something. Seriously, Bruno is pretty awful, as are his parents. So maybe it's not all Bruno's fault, but he's still pretty bad. Learn important facts about witches, such as witches having no toes. No toes? That just doesn't make sense. Angelica Huston stars as Eva Ernst, the Grand High Witch, whose true form is so vile, it appears that there is a set of testicles taped onto her chin. Co-starring is Meyer Zetterling as the cigar-smoking Grandma Helga. The cigar smoking around her grandson was definitely a choice. These 30-year-old movies can be pretty weird sometimes. Still, with all of its oddities, forgotten threads, talking mice, and underdeveloped characters, The witches can be pretty fun in some spots, thanks to some cool mouse puppets from Jim Henson. Who needs CGI when you've got good puppets? Not I. But apparently Heather does.
You knew
All right.
I was going to object to that.
Oh yes.
Yeah. All right. All right. How are we voting on this movie tonight?
I'm like sideways.
What is that?
I love this movie. I have watched it so many times, and I will probably watch it again tonight for the 50th time.
Is that a conch shell?
What
What
is
are you
that,
holding
Lilith?
there?
No, it's a raccoon skull.
Oh,
Okay.
nice.
My wands are out of reach. This is what I've got.
That's okay. We've had Stranger Things used as wands in the.
I can't decide. Like, a part of me wants to sort of give it a thumbs up or wands up. Some of me wants to kind of go maybe 50-50. I mean, it's not all terrible.
Mine is a nail file for the missing fingers, and it's all the way up.
Oh, that's beautiful.
I'm down.
How
What
are
do
we
we-
voting on the 2020 version of this film? Yeah, you're down. Lilith's down.
Mine is so far
Yeah.
down, it's not even.
Not even in the tree.
Richard-Lael's wand is underground.
That was
We have
awful.
we have a real mix in the chat. I mean, we've got
Yeah.
ups and downs, neutrals.
Neutral.
Yeah,
Big thumbs down. Wands down for me.
it's all over
Horns
the
up.
map.
Yeah, there's some like real opinions about this film. It's something either you like or you don't seem to like. There doesn't seem to be a lot of middle ground.
Nope. Oh,
I feel like I'm broken because I saw the 2020 version first, so
Oh,
that
no.
clouds my opinion. Yeah,
Oh, I'm sorry.
yeah.
yeah, you did it backwards. It was almost like a Witches by the Sea kind of situation here.
Speaking of Witches by the Sea, we have to send some love to our own Courtney Buckley, who's not with us tonight after being in Salem during Halloween. I think Courtney just needed a long day to just breathe and do nothing. And Courtney will be back with us next week. And we're going to throw a little love to Haley Castellano, who's one of our favorite Coven members too, always with us in the chat. So, different sort of show today with extra guests and no Courtney and no Patti. It's always so weird not to have Patti.
And no animatronic mice to speak of. Not a single one in our entire cast. I feel robbed.
Well, you work on that for next time.
How
How about it?
How about this? So there's no animatronic mice, but how about a bird? And hello there, I am a bird. Hello, I am hello.
See, that's okay. I know that's you, Richard-Lael.
Oh my! I don't sound like that. That doesn't sound like me at all.
It is
That's
it's just certain talking animal puppets. I will point them out when they bother me. This is not
Name,
this is
name
a-
one other, just like in the last seconds here. What's
Hocus
another one?
Pocus's cat or Sabrina's
Binks?
cat.
You don't like Binks?
I like Banks, but I wish his mouth wouldn't move when he talks. It's the
Because he
moving
uses
mouth thing.
telepathy.
I don't like it.
I think
Is this
these
like
ma-
a cinematic thing for you, or is it just like to just give you the oogs?
It doesn't give me the ooks. It just looks just cheesy to me. It's cringe worthy, as my teenager would say. It's just cringe worthy. It'd be better if they just showed it and the voice just came and it was just there. The cat is going like this. It's just a thing. It's not scary. We're good. I'm good. I'll
How-
sleep at night.
How do they talk without moving their mouths though? It's like they have ESP or something.
I can suspend my disbelief for that. It would work way better. Hey, this is the sword I'm dying on here. So let's just move on. I'm not going to give it up.
There's just so much to unpack. Welcome to next week's show when we spend the entire time talking about animatronic mice and other creatures. Speaking of next week's show, we'll be watching the movie She Will next week. So if everybody, you might want to get in on that. And this is about the time now, though, since we're already kind of cackling at Heather, I think it's time for our customary cackle because it's what all witches do. And we'll see you all next week.